the last ride of the outlaw. The sun dipped low behind the jagged cliffs of red rock, casting long shadows over the dusty streets. The town's residents hurried to lock their doors, glancing nervously at the horizon where the wind carried whispers of a man both feared and revered. Jack Black Horse Malone, the outlaw who had eluded lawmen for nearly a decade, was rumored to be riding back into town. This, the old-timers said, would be his final ride. Jack had always been a man of contradictions. Ruthless in his outlaw ways, yet capable of fleeting acts of kindness that no one could forget. He was a shadow in the desert, a whisper in the saloons, a name that brought both fear and awe. As he mounted his black horse, the wind tousled his dark hair, and he adjusted his hat, hiding the scar that ran down the left side of his face, a souvenir from a gunfight 5 years ago. The journey to this day had been long. Jack remembered the train heist in Dry Creek, the narrow escape from the law near Canyon Ridge, and the fleeting moments with the family he left behind. Every memory carried a weight, each one a step closer to the man he had become, or perhaps the man he wished he could leave behind. As Jack rode through the barren desert, the sun painted the sands with fiery hues. The ghosts of abandoned towns and deserted mines whispered his name with the wind. Each tumbleweed that rolled past seemed to echo the solitude of his existence. For years, he had lived as a shadow, neither fully part of the world nor entirely outside it. Yet, this night, the desert seemed to speak differently, urging him forward toward Red Rock. Red Rock had changed little since he last saw it. The wooden structures, worn and weathered, lined the streets like silent sentinels. The sheriff's office, still bearing its faded paint, stood at the center, a symbol of law that had long sought to cage the spirit of men like him. But Jack had never been one to surrender lightly. The town remembered him, and he remembered every slight, every betrayal, every fleeting smile of a friend turned foe. He slowed his horse as he entered the outskirts, the shadows of the evening stretching across the street. A group of children peeked from behind a broken fence, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. Jack tipped his hat, a small gesture of acknowledgement, before moving on. Even in fear, the people of Red Rock had a grudging respect for him, a recognition of the legend that had become inseparable from the man. Jack's mind drifted to the sheriff, Ethan Calloway. A man relentless in pursuit, a symbol of justice, yet bound by his own code. Jack knew this confrontation was inevitable. The town seemed to hold its breath as he approached the old wooden bridge outside of town, the site of countless tales of gunfights and narrow escapes. Tonight, it would host the climax of his life as an outlaw. The air was heavy with tension. Jack dismounted slowly, the leather of his boots squeaking against the weathered planks of the bridge. The sheriff appeared at the other end, his eyes steady, his hand resting lightly on the handle of his revolver. No words were spoken. The silence itself was a language, one that both men understood. Years of pursuit, countless encounters, and the unspoken respect between adversaries hung in the air like the scent of gunpowder before a storm. Jack reached for his revolver, fingers brushing against worn leather. He remembered every moment that had led to this point, the betrayals, the friendships, the endless chase. The wind picked up, swirling dust into the air, turning the sunset into a canvas of fiery orange and crimson. The world seemed to hold its breath as man and law faced each other one last time. A gunshot rang out, breaking the silence. The bullet was past, embedding itself in the wood. Jack rolled behind a post, his heart pounding, every sense heightened. Time slowed, memories flickering like shadows across his mind. The standoff was not merely about life or death. It was a reckoning, a moment that would define his existence. Minutes stretched like hours. Both men circled, eyes locked, each waiting for the other to make the decisive move. And then, with a swift motion born of years of practice, Jack fired. The sheriff dove to the side, narrowly missing the bullet. dust settled, and for a heartbeat, silence returned. Both men, wounded in body or spirit, stared at each other, acknowledging the dance of fate that had brought them here. The sunset bled into the horizon as Jack mounted his horse. He felt the sting of a bullet grazing his shoulder, but he rode on, propelled by a need for freedom, for redemption, for something beyond the endless cycle of pursuit. The town of Red Rock watched from a distance, whispers spreading through the streets like wildfire. The outlaw had ridden again, but this time, perhaps, not as a fugitive, but as a man seeking to reclaim the fragments of his soul. The night swallowed him, the desert vast and endless. The stars blinked above like silent witnesses to the legend unfolding below. Jack rode through the memories of his past, through the shadows of forgotten towns, past the echoes of gunfights and fleeting friendships. Every mile was a testament to his survival, to his relentless pursuit of something that had always eluded him, peace. By dawn, he reached the cliffs overlooking a hidden valley. The first rays of light painted the landscape in hues of gold and amber. Jack paused, looking back at the path he had carved through the desert, the towns he had touched, the lives he had impacted. A sense of calm washed over him, a rare companion in his turbulent life. The valley below offered a promise of solitude, a place where a man could escape the chains of his past. As he descended into the valley, the wind carried the faint sounds of life. Birds calling, water trickling, the rustle of leaves. Jack understood that this was not the end of his story, but a new beginning. The outlaw had survived, but more importantly, he had endured. The legends of Red Rock would continue to speak of Jack, Black Horse, Malone, the man who defied law and fate alike, riding into the horizon on his last, legendary journey. And so, with the desert behind him, and the promise of freedom ahead, Jack rode on. The shadows of the past lingered, but they no longer bound him. The wind whispered his name, carrying tales of courage, regret, and redemption across the plains. For in the heart of every outlaw lies a story waiting to be told, and Jack's story, fierce and unforgettable, was only just beginning.